You're listening to the Nature's Image Farm podcast. I'm your host, Greg Burns, and we're talking bees, homesteading, and the old-time ways. This episode is brought to you by EnduraHive wax-dipped equipment. No paint, no rot, no hassle. EnduraHive. Built to endure. Now, on to the show. Well, hey everyone, good evening. Welcome back to another Stream Team Beekeeping Chat with your lovable, huggable hosts, Brian Coper, Castle Hives, Bruce Jenny from Bruce's Bees. I'm Greg Burns here at Nature's Image Farm, and we're so glad to have you guys here tonight to talk about bees and whatever in the world else happens to come up. Fellas, how's it going?
It's going good.
Well, on that note, thanks for joining us. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, Brian was going to say something too. Yeah, I thought Brian was going to say
whose turn. I want to thank everyone tonight for joining us here in the comments. Looking forward to trying to catch up with how fast the comments pile in here. If you have questions or something you want us to hopefully grab our attention, please put in all caps and we'll try to get to those questions that way. But guys, you know, I thought we would, well, let's just put it right out there. At this point, I think everyone has seen an awful lot of content regarding what potentially looks like Colony Collapse 2025. And no matter which way you cut it, enough probably can't be said about it. And no matter which way you cut it, no matter how much is said about it, we still don't have a lot of answers. But I still think that shouldn't prevent us from at least having some open dialogue, exchanging ideas, because here's the real fact, the real truth of the situation is there's a lot of this country who hasn't quite yet got into their bees to see what the scenario is. And that mostly pertains to smaller beekeepers, sideliners and things in the frozen north, the frozen Midwest, Mideast, who may not have those full numbers yet. But I wanted tonight to try to talk a little bit about what are some of the common denominators. Can we start to draw any connecting lines between any of the things that we see? And Bruce, we're going to try to keep tonight's conversation.
I'll say the super chat. See the super chat over here. That's why I put it up here.
Oh, super chat. Awesome. Let's see here. Very good. Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for doing that. Dialed it in. Coach Bruce there is giving us the hand signals here.
Well, you're doing great. I just noticed that because of that super chat. So thanks for the super chat there, Pat.
Look at that. Let's just keep derailing it, Brian. Good job. What do we have there? Ohio State champions. What is that? Is that a lacrosse championship? Rugby? What is that? Soccer?
Exactly. Yes.
Foosball. Foosball. Bobby Boucher.
Yeah.
Oh man. Anyways. Well, on that note, this is going great. What I wanted to here's what I want to do tonight, guys. Beepocalypse 2025. We don't know exactly what is going on. We do know, however, that there is some catastrophic bee loss across the entire country that bridges everything that we thought we knew or any of the potential culprits. It's not just as easy as saying, oh, it's migratory beekeepers who use this product and they are in this area. It's past that. This is past the Rockies, past the Smokies. It's up all through the Appalachian Range. And as folks are getting into their colonies, as it's warming up, folks are all finding very similar stories. Now, I'm not saying every beekeeper out there is suffering 100% loss or 70% loss. There's contributing factors, and there's different pockets where there's different results. So I thought tonight maybe we can start to dial it in a little bit and see, okay, can we find anything, any common denominators? Can we find anything that may be similar? What's different about folks who aren't experiencing any kind of loss? So what we would like is if you have suffered any kind of loss this year, outside of the normal loss, which by the way is 25% is what's considered normal, the US average. If you are experiencing higher loss than normal, what I'd like you to do in the comments here, put it all in caps, put your state, your guess on your percentage of loss, and why you think that is. Okay, I'd like to just start to see a little bit what's going on here and see maybe we see it. Maybe we see some kind of a pattern. Maybe we don't. Maybe we have more questions after asking questions. But that's kind of where my mind is. Let's not focus on. Yes, we know it's bad, right? But what's the path forward actually look like? If we can find some of the common denominators, maybe we can start to see a little bit of a path forward. So that's what I want to talk about tonight. Let's go ahead and start with Bruce. Bruce, give us a little recap of all things beekeeping down in Alabama. You've been busy, and you're already past this "are bees dead" scenario. You're already in the thick of it. Bruce, talk to us about what your last week has been like.
Well, when it comes to loss, I didn't have any more loss than usual. I may have had a little better than usual winter so far. Started at the peak of last year. I was at about, I think, 144 colonies right before I harvested. That's when I counted everything. 100 of those were production colonies, give or take. And so I dropped down to, I think, probably, I feel I was surveyed today. I think I dropped down. I put the number 110. That's probably about where I was at before this past weekend. And there's a young fella here. His name is Jeremy Hartzog. Kate, sometimes he's in the comments here, but Jeremy helped me. I received 28 queens from Zach over in Hawaii, Heinzman apiaries, and we placed those 28 queens. Many of those were in splits, so some of them were just queen replacements, but we got all those 28 queens. And then Greg, we made it through the Applin bees, and we just got through like 3 or 4 colonies at Slocum, and so we didn't even get all those. Didn't get into all those because we just ran out of queens, and so got a lot of work done. It took us all day, but it was a good time. And today I guess we can talk about this later. But I have 28 more coming for this weekend, but it's going to be kind of chilly. It's going to be like 49 degrees and in the 50s, 49 Friday and in the 50s on Saturday. So that's going to be an adventure. But I mean, we could talk about that later in the video if we get a chance about how to manage the colder temperatures with trying to do queen replacements and splits. And those are primarily going to be focused on, the purpose of those queens is to help calm down. I still have, especially up in the northern part of my bees. The southern part is where they're calmer. That's where you were able to hang out with me, Greg. And that video should be coming out in the next day or two of Greg and me actually going through the bees. But those bees were my calmer bees, and the northern bees are still the traditional Bruce's bees that are a little spicy or a lot spicy. So I'm trying to get those. That's kind of my next goal, is to get those calmed down, starting with the more spicy ones, and then kind of like what I've done down in the southern route. So that's what I've been up to. It's been busy. As far as loss goes, though, I haven't had any more than usual, and I would say my bees are probably looking on average better than ever before. I don't know if that's true. Maybe it is. I don't know. They're looking better than I remember. I've always had some really nice, strong looking bees, but this year I think it's more consistent across the board. There are a few that are kind of weak, but most of them look pretty darn good, and some of them look extremely good this year.
Brian, I know you've first, before we go to Brian, Bruce, are you hearing about any losses in Alabama, North Florida, your kind of area of the country? Are you hearing or have you heard from any of the guys that you know who are operating at either a smaller scale than you or a larger scale than you? Have you heard from anybody, any reports yet on where they're at?
I haven't really heard of huge losses right here in this area, but I don't know a lot of the commercial guys. I do know there are some people that have lost some hives, but I haven't heard that right in this little pocket right here that it's been worse than usual. I do know I have asked Tyler what he thinks, and I think he's doing pretty well. He's the biggest commercial beekeeper I know personally, And I think he has lost some, but no more than usual necessarily. I think he's doing pretty good. But let me see if I can find, because he sent me, it was an interesting text he sent me. Let me see if I can find that, because, and this kind of would go along with a little bit what we're seeing. I said, my question to him was, are you seeing the loss all these people are talking about? My bees look about like usual. I've had some loss, but nothing out of the ordinary, at least not yet. He said 50 to 90% losses, no. Yearly, 30 to 50% losses, yes. I felt like my mite treatments were better and more effective this year, but I still think I lost about the same as 2023. I still see losses that blow my mind, all signs of perfectly healthy colonies, and come back a couple of weeks later and they're a complete loss or shrunk to a few frames with a queen still. I really don't know my exact percent loss. Maybe I should figure it up, but I have more bees now than I've ever had coming out of winter. So he's seeing some weird stuff, but as far as the number of colonies, he hasn't had a devastating, wipe out of his bees. And he's the guy that I kind of a barometer, because Davis is the other guy. He's a large sideliner. He's got, I think, about 400, 500 colonies, but I'm not sure how many he's got. He kind of goes up and down a little bit, but I haven't talked to him to see, but I haven't heard, he hasn't asked me or mentioned anything about having an incredible amount of loss. So personally, right here, things look about as usual for me. I haven't seen anything crazy right here in this area. You saw my bees, Greg. You saw they look pretty good. I mean, I didn't see any evidence of, really unhealthy bees in the ones we went through that day. There were some that were a little weaker, like I said, but I think my strategy this year so far seems to be working out pretty well.
Bruce, before we go up to Brian, can you give us a quick recap of what your fall flow and fall nutrition looked like this year as compared to any other years?
I think we had like August, September, it's always iffy, and we had a little bit of a dry spell there, a little bit of a drought. I think it was around the same time you guys were having one, but it wasn't anything near the extreme of what you guys had. I don't know how much fall honey they brought in. I think they brought in a little bit. We did have flowers blooming as usual, but it wasn't a bad year, I don't think, overall. But I fed the Apple Farm bees, I fed syrup, pretty much all fall, because I made some late splits. The rest of my bees I didn't do that with. I did put some open food out to them probably November-ish maybe. And then when it got cold, I started applying Hive Alive fondant and did 3 rounds of that pretty much on all my bees. And I think that really helped them. So that's my theory anyway. And I bought some sugar just yesterday to kind of supplement a little bit if I need to, if I try to, if I find some light hives when I'm trying to do what I do this weekend with them, trying to manage those new queens. And so, but no, I don't think it was kind of a normal year. Maybe every year it seems like we have a period of a few weeks where we have a drought, whether it's whatever time of the year from between spring and fall, somewhere in there it seems like somewhat of a drought. And this past year, I don't remember it being anything out of the ordinary or severe, although we did have, I think it was around that late August, maybe time frame, July, late August, maybe, where we did have some dry weather, but it wasn't ridiculous like it can be some years.
Would you say it was about average then? Fall and winter so far has been about average?
It's been a colder winter than usual. We actually had snow here. We had 6 inches right here at my house, I think it was, which we haven't had. Snow almost never collects here more than just a little bit on, frost in the grass, or maybe, half inch or something, and then it melts off pretty quick. It's very, very rare to have actual snow that collects, especially like 6 inches is unheard of. So, and overall the winter, we've had a couple of nice weeks, but January was really cold on average compared to, usually I'm sending you guys pictures about every week of 65 or 70 with the sunny. Well, I didn't do that a lot this year because we had quite a bit of really just kind of consistently cold for us weather. We didn't have Brian Coper weather or Greg Burns weather down here anywhere close to that, but you guys are having a colder winter than usual too, I think. And we had a colder winter than usual for us, but it didn't seem to, it got warm enough for me to kind of apply, I could apply the fondant patties and I could crack open the hives and just peek in there. It wasn't like bitter cold, except for a little short time there. But we did have just the average temperature, I think, in January it may have even been a record for us. It just stayed colder more than it normally does.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's important as we kind of try to, think and sort through this. It sounds like you had decent fall nutrition. You did have some early winter rains that then eventually you had more recently some snow, but nothing into like single digit temperatures or nothing for several days in a row where it was, 0 Fahrenheit or 5
No,
Fahrenheit. It was in that 20 to 35 degree
yeah.
range.
If that
That's
happens
important.
here,
Yeah.
if that happens here, it'll be like what was it, the summer of 18, whatever, 15 or 14, whatever year it was, it'll be like that, where it's like the summer that had no winter, had the summer that never was when the big volcano blasted. I'm not sure if you've heard this story, but way back then, the farmers didn't get crops planted or anything. It destroyed the environment for a year or two, and people just had a hard time. If it gets to where it's 0 here for a long extended period of time, something crazy has gone on in this atmosphere, because that, I don't think that's going to happen. It's, I mean, it cold for us is what we've had this year. It's been a really cold year for us. We have kind of bitter cold snaps every once in a while, but they are usually just a few days and gone.
Yeah.
But this year it kind of locked in, and we had very, very few days that were up like in the 60s or 70s. Even in January, that usually happens every few days. And the average temperature, I think, was just lower, if I'm not mistaken. But overall, hasn't been too bad.
You got a comment here from a Sacramento beekeeper. Lots of Florida beekeepers have been making emergency splits to cover the shortage on the almonds. Yeah, we may never know exactly kind of what's going on, but I think right now it's important to kind of get a grip on, well, what do we know? What do we think we're seeing? And maybe that helps us put some kind of plan together for the future. Right now, though, I think a lot of folks are just in this mode of, well, what can we do now? How can we keep moving forward? So, Brian, I was thinking before we get you on, Brian, I was thinking maybe we could shoot up the coast and maybe go to the eastern shore of Maryland, and let's check in with our friend Jason Crook at Bohemia Bees. There he is. Jason,
got dialed in.
We're gonna
dialed in.
Look at this. This is like it was meant to be. Jason, can you talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing in the Maryland area, how this is affecting you, and if you are hearing from any beekeepers in that shore area or in your neck of the woods, if you're hearing anything similar as far as losses go?
So I haven't, hey, thanks for having me on. I'll start with that. And I was just busy working here, listening to you guys in the background. And it was appropriate because I was looking at numbers on a spreadsheet, and I was looking at hives just peeking along using a thermal camera today. And when it was a little warmer this past weekend, I was out looking, trying to make some counts to understand where I'm at. I think this is a critical time of year for me to understand what I have left for, my overwintered nukes, naturally, my spring nukes, and then recovering any losses. And right now I'm sitting about 40 to 50% losses. It's a little higher than I thought it was. I think I was talking to Brian last week or late last week, and I said I was around 30%, which isn't bad. I've lost, 20 to 30% in years past, me averaging 15 to 20%, but I'm pushing 40 to 50% this year. And I was saying, I think I posted in the thread that I think, my strong hives that went in the fall that were like really, really strong, they're still not bad. They're still doing good. It's the ones that were normal that I would get through any other winter and have a few losses from, that they're done. They're not even a chance.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if we have had that hot, cold, a little bit hot, cold, a little bit of hot, cold, a lot of rain, a lot of moisture. And I have seen where, days you'll see a good solid colony with bees flying, activity, crack the lid, small cluster in the middle, still got some weight on it. And then you come back, I came back, a week later, and they're completely gone. So I don't know what it is. I mean, I've not seen this since probably 2018, I think is when I last saw it that bad. So yeah, from anybody else in the Eastern Shore, I haven't talked with a lot of people. I know that Rob from La Robbie's is putting head down to try to get that survey out to see what he sees. So I'm curious to see what data he gets back from all over the country as well as this area. And just regular conversations with Brian, as you can imagine, about queen right dial, we talk about bees as well. And I think my theory on what I think is kind of happening is that the weather cycle of the winters in this area, at least, it's not the same everywhere, which is probably not an answer, but definitely has a cycle, and that freeze line, or that what I call consistent freeze line, has dropped so far south. We had snow in Mississippi this year, right? We had snow in Atlanta, Georgia, which you don't typically see that. So my theory there is that if you had a weak hive going into fall, it's not your normal hives are not going to make it. That's my theory, right? You have to have an uberly strong hive, low mites, heavy resources. And I'm also seeing that, I just mentioned as well, this is the first year that I lost a 5/5. I've never lost a 5/5, and that's 5 frames over 5 frames, that chimney effect. And I was very proud of that. I was proud that I had 0% losses on that. And this is the first year I had two of them, 2 colonies that were 5/5 that are dead, just as bad as a single deep and a double deep, to the left of it. What's the reason? I don't know the answer. I think that's just my experience. I'm still trying to scratch my head at it, and hopefully I can figure out how to recover. It's not devastating completely. I had a beekeeper friend that was south of me by about a half hour about 5 years ago, or right before COVID, I should say, the winter before COVID. He lost everything. It was like 2019, I think. It's December of 2019, January 2019. No, I guess that would have been just January of 2020. He had 40 colonies and lost every single one of them. So it happens. It's beekeeping, right?
We want to just keep saying, we that's what we keep telling ourselves. It's just bee farming. It's just beekeeping. If it was easy, we keep telling ourselves all the things to just try to keep a little bit of a pep in the step. But one of the things to think about is, of course, Jason, you have Bohemian Apiary. You have a website that where you sell product, you sell bees. From a investment standpoint, investing in a financial portfolio that includes bees is proving to be I don't want to say one of the worst investments, but it's very quickly proving to be one of the a very risky investment as far as assets go. And I think that's one of the hard things about it, is when it's good, it's good. And when it's iffy, it's bad. And when it's bad, it's horrible. And there's sometimes no road in between, it seems. The thing I want to ask you, Jason, is so you've had colder than normal temperatures. You've had probably some minus degree weather on top of wind chills and such. But in the fall, did you guys experience drought in a significant way, or do you feel like your fall nutrition, your natural forage, was not where it normally is? Or what was your fall on average, below average, or above average as far as quality of natural nutrition?
When I look at natural nutrition in the fall in this area, it's goldenrod. I mean, I can see sideways and highways and everything just blooming with goldenrod. That makes me feel warm and fuzzy, because I know that that's a good, pollen source, maybe even a slight nectar source, not much, but some in the fall that they'll get, going into that last ditch of, resources. I will say that in the last 2 years, maybe 3, but definitely this past winter or this past fall, we didn't see the goldenrod. And a lot of that was due to, in my area, the mowing and spraying of the goldenrod. There's a lot of people that were, this in Maryland, they do different programs to kind of manage the ditches and things like that. So I don't know if that plays a role, or it played a role. I still fed, I still treated, they still were at weight. Is it the mix of nutrients that they're not getting, those natural, late season daisies, the goldenrod, those specific nutrients that exist in there to get them that little bit of help? Maybe. That the one thing I didn't do in the fall that I wish I would have now is the ones that weren't boiling over, is to be able to get them some late season pollen, because I did notice that there wasn't a lot of goldenrod, but I didn't think anything of it because I think, again, that even the normal ones looked good. They looked like ones that survived every single year. You have those 1 or 2 weak ones that you cross your fingers on, but when I say 1 or 2, you have a few depending on your size of your operation. But for us, it was, we have normal colonies that should be still doing well. In fact, coming into March, suspect, we want to make sure we get on them so they don't split or they don't swarm. You split them. We're not seeing that. It's black or white. Like if I went out and I said it was a normal colony that was just a decent colony going into winter, okay, they're dead. And the ones that are alive are the ones that were boiling over that had a ton of bees going into winter. That's the biggest difference that I noticed.
But is it fair to say that as you're going into fall, you had a more positive outlook on what you had going into the wintertime than what it feels like the results are in front of you? Like, does it feel like there's a data gap from what you saw going into, let's say, November versus what's coming out right? Like it just doesn't make sense. Does it seem like there's a missing link somewhere in here for you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So it's weird because I just was talking to Brian last week and I said, I'm probably around 20 to 30% losses. And I said, because I was tracking a few hives on warm busy bees being pulled out, which is, a good sign when they have enough resources and they can break cluster and they can drag dead bees out. That's I know my looks like my internet may be lagging here, so I apologize, but that's a good colony. And there's colonies that were doing that 3 weeks ago that don't exist anymore. And so you're scratching your head thinking, what changed? So
this is helpful, and this is kind of for those tuning in. Thanks for tuning in tonight to the stream team chat, where the theme is Beepocalypse 2025. What can we learn from with what we know so far, and what can we do moving forward? Imagine this is kind of like one of those apocalyptic books or movies that you see, and we're right in this beginning stages of that thing happening before we know why or what, and we're trying to formulate a plan. We're trying to assess damage. We're trying to assess, okay, what assets do we have that are at risk? What assets do we have that we can use to keep moving forward? That's kind of the mentality that I'm in right now. And as you're talking, Jason, I'm sort of thinking, what are some of the outlying things that were kind of maybe leading up to, like there's a gap here. It seems everything was, I would argue, almost seemed better than normal years. The mite counts were so ridiculously low. Not that we ever got cocky about it, but we just finally this year, I told our crew here, I said, I feel like we finally got it. We finally feel like it's all working, right? Everything just seems to be working with the mite management, right? And the colonies where they were building up and they were still restoring honey, and the colonies were a little bigger than what we would typically normally do. But I did see something, and that it was happening in that goldenrod period where we had no moisture. We were in that drought so heavily. I know we can't contribute exactly what we saw here in Ohio with everybody else in the country, but just one thing I'll throw out there just for a point of reference: that drought that we had seen was catastrophic. We've never seen a drought that bad in Ohio's recorded history, especially sustained for that long. So all those plants that are waiting, that are dormant in the soil to bloom when we have those cool temps and everything kind of kicks off, that fall flow, like there just wasn't a lot of that. And when the goldenrod did bloom, and we had goldenrod, we had pollen and no nectar. So there was not enough moisture for the goldenrod to produce both nectar and pollen. So in my mind, I'm thinking that plant is not producing at 100% potential. It did what it could reproductively just to put out pollen. And how good was that pollen? How nutritious was that? I did not see the bees working any of the asters this fall. Very little asters, and they were there and bloomed. but it was almost as though they were just void of nutrition and life, and the bees weren't touching them. They were on the chicory a little bit, but they weren't even touching any of the asters. And I didn't see very many bees even on the goldenrod. Even though there was sea of yellow, the bees weren't even on it. If the bees aren't on the only pollen that's out there, like I'm looking back now thinking, boy, that is sort of a red flag. And because we're in a part of the country where hive beetles can be an issue, now that I'm thinking back on it, we were very hesitant on putting any kind of pollen patties out or any kind of a protein replacer out there, because we don't want hive beetles in that late of the year and that be a problem. So I wasn't putting a lot of pollen patties on. We were putting down an enormous amount of liquid feed, and that was enough for them to store some of those carbohydrates. But I don't think thinking back now, and even though we use a lot of great supplements, nothing is going to replace the natural nutrients in forage. Nothing is going to ever replace that. And I'm just thinking, as these bees are building up the nutrition, so they have healthy winter bees in this, August, September, October timeframe, if there is no natural nutrition, there's just not a lot of protein out there. Where are they going to get the nutrients at to build those healthy winter bee bodies, right? They surely can't do it just on supplements alone. And so I don't wonder if that is just one more thing that we're seeing, is that the bees, we're only operating at a 60% health potential. Although the colony picture looked like it was okay, the population was okay, the winter bees themselves maybe weren't as robust as we needed them to be when those minus 29 Fahrenheit wind chills came through, when those minus 5 actuals were there, minus 8, minus 10 actual temps were there for that 6 to 7 day stretch. Maybe they just can't hang. And we saw bees failing in not just wood boxes, but insulated boxes too. And there was a little bit of a pattern. But anyways, I heard you say some of those things, and it just started to trigger me into how nutrition plays such a huge part in building up those healthy winter bees. If they're not squared away going into the wintertime, maybe it doesn't matter what the mite picture looks like. Maybe it doesn't matter what the hive configuration looks like. If your 5/5s are failing, if my doubles are failing, or story and a half, things that don't fail are failing, that's just something to think about. So
I wonder how much water plays a role, Greg, in that, because of nutrition.
Yeah.
Because to your point, you had a heavy drought, and I know that there's droughts that are defined droughts where across the country we say, hey, we had a drought in this region, that region. In the water, or the amount of moisture or rainfall in my area, while we weren't in a drought, we definitely had a lower rainfall in the last 4 months of the year. That critical time when they're kind of finalizing. And again, we were not in a drought. But if I'm thinking back and I'm rewinding, I have these horse troughs with wine corks in them. That's how I put water out for the bees. And they typically in the fall don't mess with them very much. They are on them occasionally. And I will say that they were on them a significant more this fall. And I didn't know if it was just because, the amount of colonies within the area. I've definitely grown in size and scale this year and last year. So, again, a lot of those factors, I made observations, but I didn't kind of check the box and say, hey, that's different, majorly different. But now that I think back, if nutrition is important, which it is, water is important. And if we've had a drought that was just not a defined drought across the country, we might have had malnourished bees going into winter because of those limited factors, the limited nectar sorts, the limited pollen, the goldenrod didn't, because of the drought type. And that all just kind of comes together. And if they didn't get the right nutrients, they didn't get the right moisture, bringing that into the hive to make the bee bread, to get those last bit of winter bees produced, it all could come. Yeah. It could be the perfect storm. You're right. Yeah.
There are some areas that didn't have drought and they had biblical flooding throughout areas, so they're going to be in a little bit different boat. But too little water and too much water, I think, can sometimes create a similar result where the plant is not producing nutritionally as it should. And as you're talking about that, we got to be careful with anthropomorphizing. But think of us, if we are dehydrated, right? We're not thinking straight. We're not performing straight. Everything starts to just is off kilter. What if what if a lot of the plants that the bees are leaning on from June until for the rest of the season, what if all of the plants were only operating at a 30% potential, right? It's not just going to affect honeybees. It's going to affect a lot of the other native pollinators and things too. One of the things that we had seen is no fat on the deer that we butchered, no fat this year. I don't think in however many years that we've been butchering deer have we seen carcasses so poor this year. So just one more little piece of evidence, at least in our area, that just, I think nutrition is a part of it, but I think it was maybe nutrition not creating healthy enough bees to make it through. And guys, there's this constant back and forth. Well, package bees can't hang, or only feral bees can hang. And let me tell you straight, just as clearly as I can possibly state this, we have a variety of different genetic lines in our yard, and it didn't matter if they were VSH, they were done. If they were Caucasian, they were done. If they leaned more on the Carniolan side, they were done. If they were swarms that we caught, they were done. If they were bees that we knew came out of a tree or came out of, they were living in a fender or a barn, they were done. Our splits, they were done. Our stock from our high test breeder queens, they were done. Like this current collapse situation is no respecter of genetic lines, zero. And so that's something that I'm trying to get my head around too. Before we move on, Jason, in your smorgasbord of genetics, I know you've got queens from a bunch of different places. You've got different styles and different configurations of hives. Are you seeing any correlation to package bees versus bee lines that you've had forever, swarms that you may have caught? Are you seeing any correlation at all on mortality that can be attributed to one specific method or style or type of bee?
No, because I requeened everything this past year. There's nothing from the year before, and I did not put packages in. The packages that I did do earlier this year were all requeened. So everything was requeened with actually my local mutts.
Right.
Which, maybe that's a factor. I don't know. I never really thought about the element that I requeened, but they were strong hives, and genetics do play a role. I agree with you on that. But I don't think I have I don't have enough data to make a correlation to a specific strain to say yay or nay on one or the other.
Greg, I wonder if average queen age would have anything to do with it. Maybe the younger queens, stronger queens might be able to help plow right through a little better. I don't know.
That's a great call.
Of course, Jason said he requeened everything.
Well, these are all younger queens. They're all 1 year old.
Well, yeah. Most of ours are. We probably have. If we have anything that's 3, like this year, there's maybe only we found some yellow dot queens running around and some white dot queens running around, but very few. Most everything are no more than 1 or 2 year old queen. And the thing that keeps scratching my head is there are guys who are literally let's just say dialed in, who are completely squared away, who are masters at beekeeping, that are beekeeping at scales that we can't even comprehend, right? When you talk about Indian Summer, Chris Warner, their entire crew, those guys are squared away. They know what they're doing, right? And even this year, they've gotten humbled in such an incredible way with that. And what's actually foretelling is when we talked with Chris and interviewed him, he almost foretold this to happen. Foretold that the collapse that we're seeing is a direct result of the dysfunction that we have in the human race. Go back. That's just an incredible thing to get our heads around. So, anyways, I'm just trying to better understand, man. If the masters are getting humbled, and all of us who have not achieved that level of understanding with our bees, are struggling too. Like, what is going on here, Brian? We've got another special guest on here tonight, Brian, and let's check in with the one and only Yappy Bee Man. Look at it, representing Alabama. Someone here is doing it right, Bruce? That's a good looking hat you got there.
Hey, I did that just for you, Greg.
Oh man, I feel you really know how to make a guy feel special, Yappy.
Well, you know, when I was at the North American Honeybee Expo, I was greeted by some folks from the Nature's Image Farm booth that graciously gave me this hat, and with no expectation of wearing it. But I thought, you know, tonight would be a great opportunity to get dialed in and wear the hat.
Look at that. What this is getting out of hand, guys. look at that.
Wait.
Yeah, but turn that dial around there, Yappy. Turn that dial around.
There he is. Come on, everybody. Look at this.
Orange dial that exists.
This is turning into a members only.
Exactly. That is the one off. Well, actually, two off. Okay. Yappy orange. All right. Queen right dial. Puck. Hockey puck.
Gosh, I think we almost need like members only jackets. Instead of it saying members only, you just have a queen right dial on there.
That's what I'm talking about. How did you get that to stick? That was pretty cool.
It's a secret. It's not my finger holding it at all. It's just dialed in. Yappy, you've got your ear to the ground. You hear so many things. You know so many folks. You see so many comments in your videos. What are you? I mean, what are you hearing? Because you're in North Alabama, right? What are you hearing in your neck of the woods as far as loss? How are things looking for you? And are you able to put any kind of information together for any kind of cause?
No, and I apologize. You know, we didn't get a chance to talk before we got into this, and bringing me in here with the thought processes. But I honestly don't think anybody's got a real handle on it right now. And the unfortunate side to it is you know, I've got 12 different conspiracy theory ideas on it. And, you know, I wouldn't even know where to begin to suggest, you know,
most likely
go looking at it. The two biggest things that I'm thinking is that, one thing that I notice in my world of primarily doing bee removals, the general population of beekeepers does not give enough credit to the fact that there is something in electrical waveforms that attracts or disrupts bees.
Oh, that's good.
All right. So in my world, I find that I can go to Mr. or Mrs. John Doe's house, and I open up a void space, and very more common than not do I find that there's an electrical wire running through something. There is something about the frequency, the hum, the buzz, or I don't know what to tell you in regards to a the electricity running through a wire that draws bees to come and check it out. Now, it's not a rule. I mean, I remove plenty of bees that there's not that in there. However, I find it somewhat commonly. Now, through personal experience, and I know we've got a lot of people that are in the comments, and I'd love to hear both either positive or negative if you kind of you know, agree or disagree with. But just off the back side of my property, I've got where, you know, my main Yappy headquarters at the Yappy Cave is about a 3-acre piece of property, and off the back side I have some what I call the higher tension power lines, the ones that are feed lines. Well, I went for about 3 or 4 years trying to actually keep bees underneath that power line right away, and I never could get the bees to really to what's the word I'm looking for? To actually produce. Thank you. And they never built up strength. There was more swarming from them than not. And there's really no difference between where they are. I will say that they're 300 feet ish from where I keep the bees on the other side of that bookcase on the outer wall over there, and I keep 25 hives over there that thrive. You're talking 350-ish feet between where those bees are at and where the ones that are underneath those power lines that never thrived, never did anything. And there's no agriculture around me. There's no spraying. There's nothing really that's going on. I kept that area mowed. The only difference between back here and over there was power lines. So we are at a point in our lives to where if we understand electrical radio waves, because I also do ham radio, I'll go down this conspiracy theory road, forgive me, but we have actually had to redefine cancer in this day and age, because there's so many different types of cancers out there. I mean, one cancer turns into another, and now we've got some weird, never seen before, and everybody wants to get their name in some medical journal. But the point being is 100 years ago, how many satellites did we have in the sky? How many cell phones did we have? How many TVs were going on? How much internet? We are developing into a society of living in a microwave. So when I offer that thought process up, okay, well, we've got commercial beekeepers that are keeping bees out west, 100 miles from any city, and probably a power line to go along with it. So what does that have to do with anything? Well, how many satellites does the Starlink system put in the sky about once every couple of weeks at one time? How many satellites do we got orbiting that are GPS, radiating us, and cell phone radiating us, and, radars and this and that? We've turned it into, we're basically microwaving ourselves. So there's one possibility of that the electrical influence that surrounds this whole ball of world that we live on is getting to a point where it's overdosing a bug that actually reacts to electrical impulse in some degree. Now, is that the answer of what's going on now? No, but does it have something to do with it? It's going to take somebody with a higher degree than me to figure that out.
That's interesting. Whether that's, that it's hard to say, okay, here's why the bees are not doing well. But if we just look at all the things that we normally do, when the bees do well, okay, here's our moderate baseline. How many days and nights of -20 Fahrenheit have we seen? How many years have we had no goldenrod nectar, right? But then things get a little bit weird, right? How many times were we able to see northern lights in Ohio or Alabama or you name, like how many times, right? Or Maryland? How many, these are things that are, it's a year of extremes. It's a year of abnormalities. So is it any wonder, like if our honeybees are the greatest litmus test?
I've never seen northern lights in Maryland until this past year.
Never. I haven't. I've seen northern lights one time, and that was up in Alaska. And when I was in Alaska, I was at the very southern range of where you could actually see them. And now I can see them I can see them here at the farm over my bee yards. I mean, my mind goes to the abnormalities that we have all seen this year, whether that was flood, whether that was drought, whether that was what do you call the aurora borealis? Is that geomagnetism? You've got that, right? I mean, what other abnormalities are there? But how does that the full eclipse? I mean, all these things that are just complete abnormalities, and yet we're facing a situation where the bees aren't doing well. Like, if bees are a great litmus test of the health and things being normal, like, maybe is that no wonder? I don't know.
Well, I mean, these things have been happening for 100 years, 5,000 years, 10 million years, however long you want to go on. We didn't have internet 100 years ago to share all that and to see how much of it's going on. All right, I remember it's been 15ish years ago. We had I saw the green northern lights made it all the way down to Alabama, and that was about 15 years ago. Now, how long ago was it that we were having major colony collapse issues? Who knows? Well, you're getting a lot of solar activity. Now, in the ham radio side, we have cycles of solar activity. And of that solar activity, it does go through these cycles. And I want to say we were in a higher solar window right now than we have been in a long time.
Okay. So DC's bees, the sun is at a solar maximum. He believes the sun runs on a 10-year, 20-year, and 100-year cycle, and we are at the 100-year peak. I mean, that's what if all of the challenges that we're seeing is just that? We are at the extreme edge of a pendulum swinging back and forth, and one of the results that it maybe is a confirmation of that is, hey, the honeybees are not doing well. It's an interesting to think about, that it's not just as simple as, oh, guess what? It was this one strain of virus, or it was this, like, in some on one hand, it's comforting maybe to say that it is extreme weather or natural phenomenon that we can't control that's causing this kind of loss, because it lets us off the hook. But on the other hand, knowing that it's maybe in our nature to maybe not want to take responsibility for if we have any hand in this, like, well, what if what we are doing is, are we killing our bees with all the things that we do? And they're in a vulnerable state that when we are in these weather extremes or geomagnetism extremes or all these just natural extremes that we're in, right? That's just a catalyst that shows the result that the bees aren't. It's an interesting thing to think about, that there is not just one thing possibly, but maybe there's this overarching greater thing going on of just extremism all the way around. If it's a cycle, maybe we see ourselves out of this and we see it again in 10 or 20 or 100 years.
Let me ask you this. With the people that you've been talking to, and by the way, I'd like to compliment your interview with Bob Benny. That reached out. That video has reached out a lot and getting a lot of traction. I'm glad to see that for you and for the channel. But when I saw this coming up, roughly a month ago, where people were getting ready sending their bees out to almonds, and they're finding that just the mass death of colonies and the lack thereof. Are they finding dead bees in their colonies, or are they finding mostly empty colonies?
Right.
What have you heard?
See, that's one of the things that I'm a little concerned with. Is I don't know that we've seen any autopsies. We have not seen any autopsy. Like, I haven't seen any autopsy information yet. Like, what are they actually seeing? What does that actually look like? Jason, you're froze there. Do you have any thoughts on that, Jason?
Now that you just said that, Yappy, and I was just cleaning a couple out yesterday, there are less dead bees on the bottom board. So when I saw dead outs last year,
correct,
it was a pile of bees on the bottom. It was sudden. It was like, okay, This is a dead out pile of bees. Yep. Clean it all out. There may be a scattering of bees on the bottom of my dead outs. Now that is interesting. I never even put that together.
That is huge.
Interesting.
That's what I'm seeing too. What I'm seeing, at least in my colonies, is it looks like sudden death. It looks like sudden death. There's not layers of death. There's not bees that are peeling off, right, and then adding on the bottom board like you would see in normal loss throughout the year, where they're dying off the cluster and then they accumulate, and then on nice days they start dragging them out. Like, yes, we saw some of that, but then all of a sudden what we had seen is during that January 19th through 25th, during that massive cold snap that we had on January 31st or so, when it was like 56 degrees out, and we go out to put fondant and just check on everything, when we go to look, it was full dead clusters on the comb. Like they just were instantly just boom, killed off, dead. That's interesting, Jason.
Well, now, so the second question will come behind that is, if you were seeing layers of dead bees in there, now we would, if this was a newbie asking this question, we'd ask, well, what's the amount? Are we looking at like, a cup or two? Or are we looking at 3 or 4 pounds? How much food and resource was left in there versus not? I mean, that's pretty simple. If you've got 3 pounds of dead bees laying in the bottom of the thing, but you didn't have a drop of honey, well,
That's
cold snap it. All right, so wow, we just figured that one out. But one of the things I have not heard a lot of is whether or not are we finding 2 frames of bees, not a whole lot, if any, dead bees in the bottom, or we're finding a whole lot of dead bees in the bottom, and it's just a process going on. See, I'm going to take it one step further, and if you want to bring this up later or talk about it now, here's going to be the biggest question that concerns me is this viral, and are we going to have issues? Because we're at that what point of time of the year right now? They're already starting to line people up in Alabama to buy packages. Where do those bees come from? So my concern is the pallets and pallets and pallets of packages that are going to be coming out of the off the almond pollination or whatever, where all these bees have been across the country. Second thing is where we got our guys in Georgia. I don't know about too much in Alabama, but we're now making these packages up, and now we're going to start scattering those things across the country. What if this is a result of something that's been going on for 2 or 3 years, and all of a sudden now we just realized it? Because let's go back to the one thing that everybody knows, that virus we had a couple years ago, that Corvid thing. What did they tell you was going to happen after that first season? It's going to mutate, and if it mutates, it's going to probably come up with something that's probably a little bit stronger. All right, and it's going to be harder to fight. So what if this has actually been going on for 2 or 3 years, and now this thing is manifested into something that is hitting so hard that we are seeing these losses, and we're thinking, 10 different aspects. Now this is going to get on a scale where you've got to have universities that are literally doing all these scientific tests of different things to try to narrow it down. But here's the basics. How many different viruses can Varroa pass to your bee colonies? At last I heard, and this has been 5 years ago, it was 32, 33. Where are we 32. At now? Okay. I mean, it's at least 32.
All
right.
And that's solid. But Yappy, you hit something. Jason, go ahead.
So I was just going to say, should we as beekeepers, when we see abnormal dead outs like I'm seeing, should we be cupping bees, or is there anybody that can look at a dead out and do some tests after the fact for viral loads? Can they do that in a dead out? I don't know that answer.
Well, from what I understand, I've got an interview with Earl Hoffman from Strong Microbials, and what he was mentioning is that viruses are kind of like they can lay dormant until they are activated and come alive. I don't know how that affects what we're looking at. When we mention if it's a virus thing, okay, if it is, like we did see, I don't know that I saw extreme die-off. I mean, when I think back, we were cleaning up dead outs and getting things, cleaned up in the yard into that late fall season, but it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. It seemed like regular. If this is a viral thing, my mind would think that for that transmission to happen, it would have to be in a time in the year where these communicable creatures are able to pass this back and forth. They're intermingling during that time of year, but when they then go dormant, I mean, it is what it is. Like, they're not getting any extra viruses from anywhere else. So if there is a virus and it is mutating, in my mind, it would have to mutate within the colony, within its own hive, right? But if this is happening during the wintertime and everything is seemingly fine until we put the next round of fondant on, and then they're all dead. Like, if the virus would have to be mutating, it would almost have to be doing it independently of every single colony, in every single colony, and then widespread across the country. I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible, but where is that super spreading mechanism for that to happen? Could it be there? Possibly. But when we're seeing almost, DC has a good comment here, almost like a flash freeze or a flash kill scenario. Like, what's the reasoning behind that? Brian's working on his master beekeeper. Brian, what are your thoughts on viral loads, viral transmission, and with the dead outs that you have seen? Brian, can you talk to us a little bit about what you have seen in Northeast Ohio? Are you seeing dead bees on bottom boards? Are they just in clusters? Does it seem like it was like an instantaneous kind of a situation, or a prolonged death? What are you seeing?
Yes.
Thank you, folks, and good night. Talk to us about that, Brian.
So I was texting Jason. I'm like, I actually enjoy this where I just sit here and don't have to talk. You know, I hear everything. I hear all of the talks. I hear the discussions. And my situation, I don't think this situation has just, I don't think it's started. I don't think it started just within the last, say, 2 to 3 months or 4 months. I think more of what Yappy is saying, that, well, this is probably a situation that has maybe patient zero, if you want to say, wherever this originated at was like 2 years ago, and it's trickling through. We have a bad habit in this country of, well, we ship bees all over the place. We, sell bees from all over the place. So there is no isolation. If you end up finding out that there's a situation going on with honeybees, by the time they find out, every single state has bees that probably have been contaminated with whatever it is. Now, my situation, it started a little over a year ago, because I had, last winter was the worst winter that I had had in a couple winters, 50%. And I was shaking my head. I'm like, well, I did everything that I normally did, didn't see anything abnormal. And then you're finding dead colonies that had plenty of weight on them. So I was totally confused. And from that winter, where whatever kickstarted that death, those dead outs, then we went into up here, okay, we went into an early spring. We were, 50-degree weather in February, where right now I'm looking at the temp, and it's, February 19th, and we're 15 degrees. The real feel is like 7. So that's our typical. Last year was so abnormal that then our colonies were wanting to reproduce, and they're kicking out swarms second week of April. So
Yeah,
we're 6 weeks early. Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So everything was all out of whack. The plants, everything was, it's not like Mother Nature was in like a state of homeostasis. Okay. Everything was disrupted. And we go from April and May, where we had twice our regular precipitation. So it destroyed. It just, I talked to so many people that had queen issues, and you deal with queens, and there were a lot of times that the weather, what are you going to do? If it's raining all week, if you've got virgins and it's raining all week, what are you going to do? So I had issues there. I go into the fall then, with the same amount of colonies that I started with the beginning of the year. And that was after splitting, and doing everything that I should have done. And like you said, last year was probably my best year as far as mite counts. I had a number of them with zeros. I had a handful that when I would wash throughout the year, I would get 3. And I'm like, this is great. You know, if my highest count for the whole season is 3, I'm thinking, well, I must be doing something right. You know, but now I've lost 3 more, so I'm at 5, and I expect to lose 1 more. So it's just like, you know, is there something going on? Or I'm sure everybody has seen the movie A Perfect Storm. Is it just that there were a couple kind of like small scenarioed situations going on that all kind of combined, and we're just finally getting like that Mike Tyson punch? Because if you look at last winter, and then we go into the spring, and then we go into the drought and all that stuff that just destroys their nutrition, it might just be that there's just a knockout punch that over the last year or so, and like people are saying with the solar activity, it just might be everything that is kind of all building up and building up and building up until in the last, 12 months or so, Mother Nature and everything else is just unleashing. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's just, Timmy asks, how many hives do you have going into the winter? I had 8. So
Can we get uncomfortably real for just a second here?
No, I've been uncomfortable for the last 20 minutes, but go ahead.
I think one thing that is a major problem in a lot of the communities is that we can't entertain ideas that we're uncomfortable with, and we can't talk around them, and we can't present them, right? And so as soon as you say something, you're automatically tied to and married to this certain thing. And I'm not about that. I anything and everything in the world, I've got no problem talking about and looking from all angles and talking both sides and try to mentally understand and put myself in or on another role so I can look at the other side and say, okay, here's the weak links, here's the vulnerability. Like, I'm comfortable doing that. So I'm going to throw out something and it's going to make you guys squirm a little bit. So just know that ahead of time. Okay. Maybe I don't want to put this up here. But let me see if I can screen share this. This is for peer review, okay? And this is for folks who know way more about this than I do to take a look at it, and call us out to say if this is complete bogus or if this is something that we could consider. I'm getting fired up on the inside thinking about this right now, so I'm going to try to manage that accordingly. But let me see if I can screen share this and just cruise through this. And this is going to be if conspiracy and tinfoil hats, if those things make you uncomfortable or are your triggers, then I would invite you to just hang on and let's work through that. All right, let me see if I can pull this up. I'm going to pull a Brian Coper. Okay, can you guys see this? All right, I'm gonna scroll the top here, and this was an article from The Hill, going back to June of 23. So this is not brand new, right? But is anyone familiar with any of this or this publication? What is very discouraging and very alarming is that I think at this point we all have understood that it has been stated on more than one occasion that China is buying up American farmland and appears to be making moves to control the food security of the United States. Now, we could go a million different ways on that. And here's that article if you want to dig into it a little bit more. But I want to bring something that just made my skin crawl. But when it says here that China is gaining a level of control over the U.S. food supply that is deeply concerning by controlling a significant portion of the country's farmland, China could at any time control, withhold, or manipulate the food produced on these lands, putting American food security at risk. Dumping underpriced products into the U.S. market, ranging from steel to crawfish undercuts and destabilizes American companies, and it's standard practice for China. Okay, here's the main. Can you guys see this? This is the one that makes my skin absolutely crawl. Indeed, China is also flooding the U.S. market with inexpensive, subsidized amino acids, which are the essential nutrients used in animal feed used by the American pork and poultry producers. In the long term, China threatens the viability of our domestic production base for amino acids. If we lose our domestic market, we become reliant on China for a critical component of our food chain. All right. So if you want to read more, you can go to The Hill. You can find that. This article is "We Cannot Allow China's Assault on America's Farmland to Continue." Check it out. I just, my mind went a certain way there quickly. And so what does all that mean? Like, if this is going on, and if amino acids are being dumped into this country on the protein side of things, and it's affecting pork and it's affecting poultry, we can't sit here and say that any of that is also not affecting our honeybees, no matter what the source of the protein is in any of the products that we are using. We can't sit here and say that it does not bleed over, and we can't say that it is not affecting our bees. Where do my bees go when there's nothing out there to eat? They're hitting the chicken feeders like crazy. Well, where do I get my chicken feed from? Do I grow all the corn and soy and roast all of the millet and bark? No. I go to Rural King or Tractor Supply, and we buy it by the 50-pound bag, and we get the layer pellets or the crumbles, and we bring it home and we feed our chickens and we eat the eggs, right? Do we know exactly where all that is sourced from and where it came from and what the quality is and the amino acid profile? Do we know all those things? Am I saying that China is poisoning our American food system? I don't know, but it's interesting to think about. There's been such a push for China to literally take over a lot of the U.S. farmland and crops and agriculture. Now we've got swine flu. Look at all the things that stack up. This is and of course over the last year there has been so many, for lack of better words, stacking of turds in all aspects of all of this that nothing seems right. Nothing seems like it's heading in the right direction. But you can't overlook the fact that maybe there is way more to the story than we can ever understand. And don't even get me going on all the other conspiracy theories, but that is not just a conspiracy theory. That is appearingly fact. How does that play into any of this? Does it play into any of it?
So you went down this avenue of, and I'm going to add something to it. A few months ago, a commercial beekeeper in Alabama, who I've never shook hands with him, spoke to him a time or two. He's a grumpy sort, and I think Bruce knows exactly who I'm talking about. Well, that man posted a little something that was kind of a just snippet of a warning. And I'm about to, if you guys can see the regular chat, right? I'm about to put a word in the regular chat. Begins with a T. There it goes. I want you to look that word up, and I want you to realize where what I just posted was what he has suggested is coming to this country, and it's going to be something that will be the major devastator of. It's Tropilaelaps. It's a mite. Now, we deal with varroa mites all the time. We've been dealing with quite some time. However, that particular genetic comes out of Asia and India and a few other countries. Do some research on that one. But that one was supposed to be the big storm, the hurricane of. He said that 3 or 4 months ago. What are we talking about tonight? What's been the hot topic for the last basically month in the honeybee world? Commercial beekeepers with major losses. All right. Now, we won't know from the hobbyist standpoint, honestly. It's just barely starting to come out in the hobbyist level because we get guys like Bruce in South Alabama who's going to hopefully be in his bees in the next week, and he's going to have an update on his to-do. I'm 3 or 4 hours north of him. I still got another couple, 3 weeks, 4 weeks before I'm getting into my bees. Brian, how long before you getting into yours? Another month, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. Jason, a month and a half. So we're not even beginning to see the beginning of, but as hobbyists, we're used to having major losses. I talked to Bruce about 3 or 4 years ago, and Bruce came along and he called me, he said, "Man, how's your losses doing this year?" I said, I've lost a couple of nukes, but I'm not hurting all that bad. And he was having way higher than normal losses. And, we talked about it a little bit. I don't know if I ever recall if he ever kind of had an idea why he done that. But anyway, when you look at that word that I give you, how can that play roll back into the conspiracy of, is this something that's been, dropping like handfuls of sand in the prison yard from the guy who's trying to break out? Where has something been brought over here? Think about Australia. What's the one thing Australia didn't have till about 2 years ago?
Yeah, Varroa.
Varroa. All right. I've spoken to some very, very commercial beekeepers in Australia, and they have a very, very strong feeling how that happened. And we won't even go down that road. But the point is that
between those lines, yeah.
The Varroa showed up, okay, and it was throwing a curveball in their world. It doesn't. If you can turn around and bring enough Varroa somehow into a country that never had it, and it take off and be that significant, then what can be brought into this country when we have the conspiracy thought processes of that can or can't be proven about viruses towards humans? Now we have viruses towards the one thing that supports our food system the greatest.
It's something to think about. And if we were, this is campfire conversations.
Oh yeah.
This is conspiracy campfire conversations. But just imagine, if you will, a scenario where the American honeybee population is catastrophically crippled, and as we're all building things back and trying to get back on track this year, can you imagine what would happen if Tropilaelaps shows up in 2025 or 2026? I'm not fear mongering, and I'm not spreading fear. I'm not spreading misinformation, but I'm just saying we have to think about those things, and we have to be, how are we going to protect our asset? How are we going to keep our bees alive? We can't live and operate in fear, and I'm not suggesting that we do, but we have to look at risk and find ways to mitigate it before it happens. And here we are, blindsided with 100% losses in some areas. 50% seems to be the common so far number. I mean, what happens when we try to rebuild and there's another boogeyman under the bed that pops up? I mean, that's something we have got to think about, no matter what the cause is. Do we have Tropilaelaps yet? We are, if we as the stream team and community have done anything very well, it is really encouraged folks to do mite washes. And we would have seen and do late mite washes, clear up until November, right when you put them to bed, do those last washes so you know where we're at. I know without a shadow of a doubt, going into November, we had no Tropilaelaps. But that doesn't mean we didn't have some weird or different rogue virus. It doesn't mean that there wasn't all these weird or wacky things getting ready to happen with the weather and solar and all. Like, I don't know. Bruce, let me ask you something, Bruce. There is so many potential things going on here. Conspiracy, coincidence, weather, death, right? Bruce, is there anything, does Bruce Jenny have any gut feeling on what may be going on right now?
Man, I don't know. The thing that's odd about it to me is that in some areas the losses are normal or not even as bad. In other areas, it's complete devastation. I haven't done a video on this, and I haven't really done a lot of interviews on this because I just kind of want to sit back and watch what happens. Yeah, I think Brian Lee and Yappy mentioned the fellow here in Alabama. He is an old school commercial beekeeper. And he was convinced, I think, that a lot of the problems are because of tracheal mites coming back, actually, or some similar type problem. He's been saying tracheal mites, because he went through that tracheal mite devastation back many years ago, and he thought it looked like that. But recently he kind of changed the tune a little bit and said, could it be something like tracheal mites or something like that? He said that he used menthol in all of his colonies this year, which is something I have never done, and he used to do it for tracheal mites, and he said that his colonies are looking really good. So I think he's convinced there's something going on similar to that, but it could have to do with the gut. I know a lot of people talk about the bee gut. It could have to do with the tracheal system of the bee. I don't know, but whatever it is, it's something kind of crazy. And like I say, I've just been kind of sitting back. I wonder if, was it you? Who was it that mentioned the word perfect storm? I wonder if this year may have been just it may have been kind of like it may have been a weather event. It may have been a combination of a lot of things with the sun, the weather, and so many different things. Maybe I really don't know. And so I really don't have a strong opinion. There are some people I see in comments and different forums and on videos, and some people that are taught they have it figured out. They think they know it. Of course, it's the neonaticide. Of course, it's this sprays.
No.
Of course, it's the whatever. I'm like, I mean, nobody knows. I don't think anybody ever really figured out what the cause of colony collapse disorder was, CCD. But then it kind of passed, and we kind of went through a little bit of a relief from that. Although people always lost some colonies. I tend to agree, though, that anytime you're hauling, it's just think about, and this is going to be kind of a strange example, but way back when the people that sailed, the explorers, would go across the ocean and they would encounter a new island, whether it be, like the Polynesian Islands, or I know for sure, like when they came and they hit the Americas, the natives there had never been exposed to the cold before, certain viruses, and it wiped them out. It devastated them. And then over time they become, immune to it and got better. I just think anytime you're exposing, your livestock to spreading it all around, which happens with bees naturally do that because that's how they've survived all these years. They mate with a lot of different drones. They multiply, they swarm, they expand that way. And then we're actually increasing that by moving them all over the country. And so you're going to be exposed. If my Alabama bees go to California and pollinate almonds and come back, there's no telling what genetics they've been exposed to. There's no telling what viruses they've been exposed to. We don't know. And that can have a very devastating effect initially, but over time, the hope is that the bees will develop a stronger immune system. Of course, if we're talking about issues with sprays or environmental things that are caused, whether it be by humans or sunflowers or whatever, the bees can't overcome. They can't overcome, man-made chemicals very well, probably, right? Maybe over a long period of time they can. So I don't know if that's it or not. I know that a lot of beekeepers have kept bees around, row cropping their entire career. There's row cropping all around here. We got peanuts, we got cotton, we got soybeans, mostly peanuts and cotton. We got pecan trees. We have people that have satsumas, which are like oranges, type orchards around here, and all that stuff, peaches in some areas, all that stuff gets sprayed and is taken care of. And people have been keeping bees here for many, many years throughout the country. So I really don't know what the answer is. I know that Michael Palmer's done some studies up in Vermont, and he's tested the pollen coming in there in a highly agricultural area, I believe, and the pollen is being affected by the different stuff that's being put out by the farmers. But I don't think we can blame it on one thing. I don't know if we can blame it on a combination of things, and I don't really think anybody knows. And I think this year may be just a combination simply of all the environmental factors, man-made or not, in combination with the extreme weather in certain parts of the country. It might have just been that perfect storm. But it's going to be, that's why I haven't commented on it much, because I don't know, and I really haven't watched everything that's out there. I'm just kind of sitting back and seeing what happens. As I mentioned earlier in the video, my bees are about like they normally are. I've had some loss, but it hasn't been devastating. Not yet anyway. I hope it doesn't get to that point. And I hope they continue to, I expect some loss every year, and mine has been fairly average for me this year. It hasn't been a lot better than usual. It hasn't been a lot worse. My colonies, top to bottom, on average, look, I think, as strong or stronger than they ever have. but I've really taken a lot of effort. I put a lot of effort into trying to do the IPM treatment, protocol. I've tried to feed them probably more than I ever have before. I've tried to really stay on top of them better than I ever have before. But I think, was it Greg, you that mentioned earlier in the video that, he's making his tinfoil hat there. Greg, I think earlier you mentioned in the video that some of these guys have experienced extreme loss.
Yeah.
Had it dialed in, they've had it dialed in for years, and they take extremely good care of their bees, and they're still having loss. And so I don't know, man. That's my theory. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I have no clue. I'm sitting back and kind of watching to see what happens, and I haven't really watched. Everybody's done a video on it. It seems like a lot of people have, and I haven't done one on it. I'm just and I haven't watched a lot of the videos because, to me, there's common sense. These things we've talked about, most of them here tonight, all the different ideas out there. But until someone has some studies, some results, and things that they have determined and figured out, I'll be interested to see what they come up with. I'm not really gonna put my foot into one camp or the other. I don't know if we're ever going to know exactly what's happening, and hopefully it'll be a cycle that we go through, and hopefully we can pull back out of it pretty soon. But the tropy, I'm going to call them the tropy mites because I don't know how to say that long word.
Tropilaelaps.
I'm just going to call them the tropy mites, if that's okay, or Tropilaelaps, whatever they're called. But those things sound like an absolute bear, and it's going to be tough. If it's worse than Varroa, it's going to be a challenge. And hopefully, I know that there are people going from our country over to, is it Thailand or wherever they are over in Thailand or Taiwan or somewhere. I know Auburn University had some students go over this year. And I know, what's the beekeeper that's been over there doing the studies? The Sam Ramsey, is it Ramsey? Is that his last name?
Richard Ramsey.
Richard Ramsey.
Samuel Ramsey.
I think it's Samuel Ramsey. I know he's been over there. He's done a lot of work and studied on that. So they're trying to get a head start on that, trying to figure out, kind of study the darn little pest, and then figure out we'll be able to head it off. Hopefully, if it never makes it, but if it does, we might be able to manage them by the time it gets here. I hope they can come up with some solutions and we can figure it all out.
Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, India, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and it's getting a pretty good foothold over in Europe. So,
Tropilaelaps is.
Yeah. That.
When you say Europe, what do you mean by Europe? What part of Europe?
Foothold in Europe with verified reports in the Krasnodar region, Western Russia. Their primary host are the larvae. Yeah, so Europe is in probably close towards that Russian curve over in there.
Ukraine to get in that area over there. So
probably.
Yeah, look at that difference there. That's a great photo.
Smaller.
Yeah.
I mean,
different.
It's hard enough. Go ahead.
No, I mean, it just when you look at that, I think thank God, the silver lining in any of this is that because of the mite mania over the last couple of years to create products and ideas and share this, it's very rare to find folks who aren't familiar with mite washing now. I think back to just a couple years ago when there was an attempt to dress me down publicly by some local bee inspectors, because they thought in no way, shape, or form should we be teaching beginning beekeepers to do mite washes, to make choices on treatments for their colonies, that we should just tell them what to use and when to use it. And I think back to that, and I thank God that I feel like God's given us direction on what to do and how to do it, and the approach that we've taken because of that. Anybody who comes to Nature's Image Farm and attends any of the learning yards, it is nearly impossible for you not to know what a mite wash cup is, how to do a mite wash, and why it's important. And that has spread to so many all over the place. And that is so huge. And why is that so important? Because when Tropilaelaps shows up, not if, but when it shows up, we're going to be able to know about it very, very quickly, and maybe be able to do something about it. But imagine if there's a 30 or a 40 or a 50% boom in beekeeping, or beekeepers who are beginning beekeepers who don't know what to do, they don't know how to do it, and something like this hits. you're talking catastrophic loss, the likes of which have never been seen when that shows up. But at least now we're equipping beekeepers with methods and ideas and tools and a solid foundation to do something about this when this comes. But I love this. This statement from Mr. J.W. Irwin. I've got a great little conversation with him and a couple other beekeepers where I ask them, "What is your gut reaction? What do you think is going on?" And Mr. J.W. here, what a great response. He says, "Greg, how about natural depopulation? When any species gets overpopulated in an area, Mother Nature comes up with some form of disease to depopulate the species." I don't have a historical account on that, but that makes a lot of sense to me. That maybe what if that is true? You know, what if that is fact? What if Mother Nature is calling and thinning the herd? You know, what if she is?
There's just so many. I mean, I don't think anything we've talked about tonight is a complete, conspiracy theory. I think it all could be. It could be one of those things. It could be a combination of some of them or all of them. I don't know. I do know too that you guys, the colds you've had up there this year has been absolutely ridiculous, as far as the bitter cold temperatures that aren't common for your area. So, if you see bees just on the frame, like you talked about earlier, I think it was Jason. I wonder if maybe they just just froze. If they just, because you got to have a certain cluster size to survive the cold. I wonder if they happen to maybe
so
just frozen,
cold, so fast, so hard. I mean, nothing has time to thermal regulate. I think that could be one thing. I wanted to bring on the one and only Mr. Tom Sosman, because Tom hails from Missouri. So right now on board here, we've got Alabama, we've got Ohio, we've got Maryland, and now we've got the great state of Missouri, or Misery, I guess, depending on how the year is going. Tom, can you talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing, what you're hearing? And the reason I wanted to bring you on is because I saw a couple comments that you were throwing around, and I want to dig into that just a little bit. Can you tell us so far what are you seeing and hearing? You've got a pulse on the situation and ears on the ground with your heavy involvement with the EMBA in your area. Tom, what can you say? What's your gut reaction? What are you hearing? What are you seeing?
Well, first of all, I'll say I'm probably not qualified to talk on any of this, right? If I'm being really honest right now, but I can speak for what I'm seeing in my own bee yard as far as any issues that I'm seeing. And I can honestly say I'm not experiencing what some of these commercial operators are seeing. I do have some loss, and I would attribute it to beekeeper failure, basically. So a lot of my small nukes that I had built up that I probably should have been feeding a little bit more heavily throughout the season to build numbers on them. And we had some extreme cold throughout January. I think most of the country kind of seen that. And not having those population numbers to withstand those long cold snaps. I mean, we seen the entire month of January was absolutely bitter. And then we got about, I don't know, maybe 5, 6, 7 days where it was a little bit warmer, and then right back to cold again. And these little small clusters just can't keep up with that. So I would attribute that to my own failures, when it comes to that. But, we can't know what's around the corner. We can only do our best, right? But so anyway, I'm not experiencing anything because most of my colonies are actually really strong. And, I do hear a lot of the chatter. I mean, it's probably been in the top of the news articles for anybody that's anywhere remotely close to the beekeeping community for at least the last probably 3 weeks, maybe even a little better than that. But, I always have a lot of ideas about what I think it is. And like I said, I'll preface it first with, I'm really not qualified to talk about this. When you try to think about things logically and what kind of makes sense or options or things that could be out there, I mean, I think that really nothing's off the table. There's a lot of guys that have been in agriculture far longer than myself, whether it's bees or not. And I'll just bring to light JW. He's a person that I really have a lot of respect for. He's been in agriculture and animal husbandry for quite some time. And so, I don't know. I think there's something to be said about what he said for one. Like I said, I myself, I really don't know. I had a conversation with Jim Masucci, and I think, Greg, you probably met him when you were in St. Louis a couple weeks ago. He's actually was a researcher for Monsanto for a number of 20 years, and he researched varroa mites specifically. And he always has an objective point of view when it comes to certain things. So I kind of like to hang close to these guys a little bit and try to gain a little bit of wisdom from them. And he had a couple of good points that he brought out. His initial, and he's been involved with a lot of commercial operators throughout doing field trials and studies and stuff like that during his research. And he really didn't have a solid answer because he had talked to some commercial guys and gotten some information back, and everything so far was kind of inconclusive. Some stuff he asked me not to share, but regardless, it was just at the end result was kind of inconclusive at this point. And to be quite honest, we really might not know at the end of this thing what really is transpiring. I also like the idea that sometimes, and this may not gain a lot of popularity and it might paint a target on me, but I think that there's such a thing as good animal husbandry. But I also think that when it comes to an insect that we now deem as livestock, I think we give ourselves more credit for having control of things that we really don't have control over. And again, that may be an unpopular statement, but sometimes Mother Nature has a tendency to correct things that we're screwing up. And I'm not saying it's anything specific, but I don't know, just kind of my initial thoughts on it. You know, that's my opinion. It doesn't mean much, but at the end of it, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And you had mentioned something in the comments. So I'm not going to hold your feet to the fire for being responsible for the one to take the conversation here. But I do want to bring this up because it is important. One thing that I think is very unfair that I keep hearing constantly is there are treatment-free camps that are quick to all of a sudden blame all the treaters for all the problem, and then there are folks who do treat who are blaming the treatment-free crowd for causing viral explosions, right? And right now, and Bruce said it very well earlier, you know, we don't know what's going on. And there is a lot of people putting out a lot of content who are grandstanding, is what it is. They're and they're using it as an opportunity to posture, and they're using it as an opportunity to politic. And I don't think that's the right move at all, because nobody knows. And the fact of the matter is, Bob Benny said it very well in the time I spent in that video that I just put out, is even after this has been going on since the early 1900s, some even say late 1800s, that this has always gone in cycles. And even with the last colony collapse, after the millions of dollars and countless hours and effort and researches and life work of folks, guess what? There's still no answer, right? If we have spent the last 20 or 30 years trying to figure out what went wrong 20 or 30 years ago and we still don't know, what world do we think that we are, that we're going to actually get to the bottom of this right now? We may never see the light at the end of this tunnel, and that just may be part of it. That may be part of us accepting this. But one thing that does, and I'll use the word loosely, but infuriates me, is when folks are so quick to judge and are so quick to reach a conclusion on things that they know nothing about. And I mean that kindly and humbly as I possibly can. But we have folks who are grandstanding and saying this is what's going on. They are not in a position to make that call, but they're using this as an opportunity to grandstand. I don't appreciate that, and I don't think that that's the right move. And here's one of the things that bothers me, is it's very easy for the guy who's got 2 or 3 colonies who just started this year to blame all of this on the dirty dog commercial beekeepers when they have zero idea of what it actually means to be a commercial beekeeper. They automatically think that commercial beekeepers are rickrolling everything. They're billionaires. They can afford to lose 1,000 colonies, and they just magically make bees appear out of this well of endless bees because, you know, they're commercial beekeepers, and all they do is just make trash bees and send around the country. They have no idea that this is a business, and it is one of the tightest margin, lowest profit businesses on planet Earth. and how hard it is to actually keep something like that floating and moving forward. And the sad fact of the matter is, a lot of the opportunity and a lot of the existence of a lot of commercial beekeeping is funded by insurance, is funded by ELAP, is funded by these catastrophic failures every other year, or every 5 years, or other 10 years. That is the price of doing business when it comes to commercial beekeeping. And I'm going to say it, and I will own these words, but if it were not for commercial beekeepers, there would not be the opportunities for hobbyists. There would not be the opportunities for backyard beekeepers, because everything that we know as modern day beekeeping is riding on the shoulders and the backs of the commercial beekeeping industry.
That's
Right? If you want to have gum logs, if you want to catch swarms and go harvest wild honey, go for it. I think it's awesome, and you should do it. But that's what beekeeping looked like. Woven skeps. It was very limited, very few beekeepers, very few colonies per beekeeping. Maybe that's the way things should be. That's not the way things are. Yeah. So we can't point to commercial beekeepers and say, you're the reason that we have all the problems. Here's one thing that I would like to bring to the attention of anybody who thinks that it is a commercial beekeeper problem, or think that it is an amatraz problem, or it's a tactic or a magic, or you name the bovatraz, right? What you're going to find out is when any of this research and studies, if it makes the light and all these surveys, we could raise our hands right here on the screen and say, who used bovatraz, tactic, or magic this year? And probably none of us are going to raise our hand, right? Who used Apivar this year? Raise your hand. Okay. Who used Formic Pro this year? No one. Okay. Who used oxalic acid this year? Okay. And then there's Yappy, who used nothing but his charm and good looks. Okay. We can't blame this. We can't blame it.
Bees yet.
Well, we can't blame this on a specific treatment, right? We can't blame it on, like, are there synergies? Are these things? Possibly. But I can tell you, we've experienced significant loss. And we've never used amatraz. Nothing that we have has ever been exposed to amatraz or tactic or magic or bovatraz, or you name it, right? So an amatraz resistance creating that definitely could be a problem, but that's not my problem, right? That's not one of my contributing factors. One of the biggest contributing factors that we have in our neck of the woods, we've already talked about it. Extreme, seemingly poor nutrition late in the year, no flow, and very cold, very hard cold flashes that came on quickly, right? Literally, a lot of the mortality could be significant cold flashes so quick that the bees were not able to withstand. Here's what I've seen so far. When you get down south, and when you get into that part of the country, northern Alabama, you get into Tennessee, for instance. Tennessee, I just came back from a dinner where I got to meet with Craig Midget and Tennessee Tim McCandless and Dick Brickner, right? Ryan Taylor, and get a pulse for what is going on in Tennessee. Those guys are like nearly not affected at all. Well, why is that? They didn't have the hard freezes. They didn't have all the floods. They didn't have all the drought. They were somewhere in between. All of this was buffered just a little bit. It seems like areas where these catastrophic swings are buffered, they're doing okay. But in areas where it was extremism, that's where the failure is seeming to happen. And I'm going to slow down because I'm going to get fired up, and I'm going to start chewing on something I probably shouldn't.
Hey, Greg, there's one unintended. Yeah, absolutely, I agree. There's one unintended consequence that I think that no one's really talking about. We're all in the moment of all the losses and where are the losses and who lost what, when, where, why, and why do we lose it. But we have a season coming up for a lot of beekeepers here that rely on packages, that rely on nukes from commercial
Come back,
beekeepers,
come back
from those mass. And at the end of the day, if they've lost 80%, they're not going to have the nukes, the packages, and what we need as hobbyist beekeepers or sideline beekeepers to grow our apiaries, or to actually replace our losses if that's what a local beekeeper would do in their apiary. Some of us know how to rear queens and split, all those types of things like that. But a lot of them don't. A lot of people in the stream don't do that. So, that it's going to be a downstream impact. It's going to have ripple effects for a season or two, I think. And that's the one thing we're not talking about is how do we band together? How do we look at some local beekeepers in our area? I know for me, for one, I'm trying to reach out to the people that are buying nukes from me and asking, did you lose everything? What did you lose? How can we help? What can we do to try to get you back on your feet, get you moving so they don't just quit beekeeping completely? Because we're going to need them to subsidize the massive loss that we've lost in the commercial world to keep wanting that passion moving forward.
Now, but you brought that up. But see, so wow, so many thoughts at the when it comes to the study of what's going on, I think that the variable, trying to figure out the variables to this, or the origins, the possibilities of, and let me throw this out there. I think that the study should be done using the commercial guys, because the commercial guys are very standard in their steps of what they do. Okay,
100%.
Yeah.
But when we get into, I'm not a fan of the surveys. And Bruce said when we started this, he just filled out a survey today. Now, Bruce, how many colonies you keep, Bruce? 100 and where you at? Did you say like where are you at right now?
Probably 120, 125.
Okay,
Or more, something like that right now.
Now I know Bruce, and I know Bruce has been doing this for a while. He's got a great handle on what he does, and time and colony numbers. Bruce could give good information of. He keeps records and understands the processes. But when we start throwing in the hobbyist or the backyard guys, the small people in there, I think we introduce way too many possible variables. When we put that survey out there, we're asking a guy that's got 12 hives. Well, what was your losses this year? Oh, I lost 10 to 12. All right, but now, what are the variables that could have caused that? What was your flow in the fall? Okay, how heavy were those going into fall? Were these package bees? Did you make weak splits? There's so many different variables that if they were to consider those, it's going to make the entire thing look like we've had a nationwide 80% colony loss. Mm-hmm. All right. So be careful, to those that are sitting here listening, it's just be careful where your studies and what you're watching comes from, because when we talk around the table at the bee club and we're talking about 80% losses, there's way too many variables in there that could have created that, versus we're looking at people who do step by step the same and now see what they did.
So that's solid gold, because what
people like to ride the negativity.
They do, and like the dog pile on that. And also, and one thing I'll mention, and that was a beautiful point you made. But one of the things in there is so important, because everybody's experience is valuable, right? And everybody wants to be heard. And I mean this with as much respect as I possibly can. But if I was looking at a survey on loss, let's just be honest. I'm speaking about me, okay? So no one get their feelings hurt. All right, and let me just put out a little disclaimer. If you have tender toes, then please lace up your steel toe boots, okay? Because I'm gonna step on them, and I don't mean to. There it is. Show enough is all right. There, he gone. I can tell you, this is Greg. Greg in year 1, and Greg in year 2, and year 3, and then year 4, and then year 5. Did I know what I was looking at? Did I know what my fall nutrition was? Did I know all those things? Did I know whether or not my colonies were squared away and the right size for winter based on another 5 or 6 years of experience saying, here's where they were, here's how they came out? Did I know my mite counts? Did I know my nutritional qualities and quantities? I didn't know any of that, right? But when you get into year 7 and year 8 and year 9 and year 10, this picture starts to come together. When you get into year 20 and year 30, right, and year 40, okay, it is a part of you. Bob Benny said a beautiful thing in his presentation at the EMBA workshop, might I add, that he gave a quote, and I don't think that he actually knew where the quote came from. It's an ancient quote, where something to the effect where wisdom is not something that is gained. It is something that is fully realized and the atoms, something to that effect. Meaning, when the beekeeper now has all this wisdom, like every part of you knows this thing and you get it, right? All of the atoms, all the cells, all of you. So everyone's opinion is what it is, and their experience is valuable. But I want to hear from folks who know specifically the nuance of the things we just outlined. That's the information that I think is very critical, especially folks who are operating at 50 or 100 or 1,000 colonies, where you guys mentioned it. It's consistent. It's uniform. We did all of these things on all of these colonies, and here was the result. That is what really moves things forward. And if Johnny's got 2 colonies and one died, and he had a 50% loss, and he's not exactly sure which product or when he put it on, or if they were heavy or if they were light. This is his first year doing this, so he's not sure if that's normal. Like, that's important information, but it's not actionable intel that we can do something with in a hurry. So you guys made some really great points. One thing I want to throw in here. Go ahead, Bruce.
I think those are really good points, but I also think, Brian did a video recently about the hobbyist beekeepers as well, and how they are affected too. So I think maybe we just need to I do agree that when you have a lot of hobbyists that have a very small amount of colonies, and kind of like what Yabby was saying, it kind of skews the numbers a little bit. So I think the big survey, like I have 100 something colonies, I filled it out. I think they're just trying to kind of get a handle on what the heck the losses really are. You know what I mean? Because like I said, you got people, big commercial guys are losing 80% of their operation, and then I'm right where I usually am. So is it really, I just think there's been a lot of loss, but I think it's just all happened. Like someone was saying earlier, was it Tom saying earlier that this is all just blown up like in the last 3 or 4 weeks? I didn't hear anything about this really until just recently. And so is it just this year? Is it something that's just happening this year? Is it because of environmental factors and just perfect storm situation? Or is it something that's going to continue from year to year? So I don't know. I'm kind of like Tom. I'm sitting back and watching. I don't feel qualified to talk about it. That's one reason I haven't. But I do think Brian made some good points in his video where he talked about how a huge percentage of the industry is just the hobbyists. You got to have them out there too. And so, and they're experiencing loss as well. But I know that where the most of the can you say the work or the consistent work that's going to happen, the studies and so forth that are going to happen, in order to have a study, you have to have enough colonies to really study them. And so there's
consistent
always
metrics.
You got your control group, you got your different groups to study. And so it's tough for like a small hobbyist that's got 12 colonies to really do an effective study. However, their numbers are important too. Brian down there, he struggled some this year with the losses, and it's just painful. And so we got to remember that it's hopefully if it truly is a CCD type situation or a catastrophe in the beekeeping industry, it's going to affect everyone as well, not just the commercial guys. But I do think I agree with you guys that the commercial guys are more equipped to do the studies and really do the work and figure out what's going on, because you just have a much bigger sample size, and you do have certain practices, and you do have certain principles and practices that you do on all your consistently over a large number of colonies, so you can be consistent with what you're doing. It's really just a crazy thing that's happening, and so many people are really upset about it, and I'm worried about it. I'm worried about it too, but I'm going to take the Tom approach. I'm just going to kind of sit back or I'm just going to kind of watch and observe and try to learn. And I've got my ideas, but I have no idea that's firm. Like I haven't formulated any opinion on it really, because I just simply don't know. It's just kind of crazy.
Well, it is what it is. No matter which way you cut it, it is what it is. And let me be really clear: the hobbyist, the 1 or 2 colonies, or the 10, all of those are metrics, right? But when Brian is sharing when Brian is sharing his experience, Brian has 8 years or something. Like when Brian says, "I lost my bees and it was the worst this year than I've seen, and here's all the things that I did, and here was the result." Like right. That is valuable, and that is an important metric, because he knows how to relay as much as possible the reality of that experience to where it's just data driven and factually based, because he's had enough experience to say, I did this for mites. I did this for feed. Here's the type of bees that they were, and then here's my result. Like that is important, and that's helpful, and that helps things move forward no matter the scale. So the metrics, how clean the metrics are, I think is what's important. But what is that? You know, we could talk about that all night. At the end of the day, how much does that matter? You know, if we still can't get to the bottom of what the problem was 20 years ago, how are we going to get? Do we think we're going to get to the bottom of what this is now? And let's just say, and as we wrap this up, even if there is extreme conspiracy going on, right, and you name it, right, from the sky to the soil, if there is extreme conspiracy going on, are we ever going to know? Are we ever going to figure that out? No, we're never going to. Just like they never figured out what exactly the CCD was to begin with. So here we are left holding a bag with the problem and having to figure out, how do we move forward?
Greg, I think there's a good comment there, and I wanted to talk about this briefly. American Bee Lady, can you guys put that up there?
Which one is it, Bruce?
The American Bee Lady. It's up 6 or 7 up. It's talking about
you have a timestamp?
It's just right. It just barely came through, I think. Just like it's about 5 or 6 up from the bottom. It's right above. Right above DC's bees.
Oh,
yeah. Okay. So, American Bee Lady says maybe those almond guys just want higher price, $400 a hive, not $230, because everything has doubled in the last 7 years. So this is a point I want to talk about just a little bit, because, you know, really any of us who keep bees understand that prices have skyrocketed on equipment, on feed, sugar, gas, fuel, everything. And these commercial guys are, you know, they're putting a lot of money into their operations every year. Everybody is, honestly. And I don't think the prices of almonds have gone up at all, you know, for several years now. And I'm kind of in some of the commercial beekeeping threads, and it's really just frustrating for them, because they're just not, you know, everything's increasing. And it's kind of like, I think that happens with the farming in general. You know, the cost of operation is more, but the return on investment is not where it should be. So it's difficult to make a profit. And so I don't know that and same thing's going on with honey. You know, those of us who are selling honey out here, you know, I can do pretty well with local honey that I'm selling to because the people understand it, and I can make a pretty decent profit on that. But for the commercial guys who are trying to sell honey in bulk, you know, with all the stuff coming in from other countries that's watered down, we don't even know what it is, it's driving our prices down dramatically in the honey industry. And I think we all know that. And so there's got to be a way to circle the wagons a little bit so that beekeepers can cut into it, or make a little bit of that profit, make a little bit more money, and be able to stay profitable. These commercial guys, they put a lot of work into this, and for $230 a hive, it sounds like a lot to some people, but really it's not. They're not making the profit they probably need. Nowhere near per hive what they were making a few years ago, just because of all the cost that goes into with equipment, trucking, fuel, everything. And so I don't know if that has anything to do with the bee loss out there. If that has anything to do with it, I think that there might be an implication there. Maybe there's some conspiracy going on that to jack the prices up on what they get paid, but I'm not sure about that. But there's something going on. Like I said, we don't know, but I just thought that would be a good thing to address, is that, you know, we have to figure out a way to, hopefully we can close the borders to imported honey coming in, so beekeepers, commercial guys can make more per pound on their honey. And then we can all make a profit, or we can all be successful in our endeavors.
Is there any of this going on out there? I mean, sure, but here's why this, and I mean this as respectful as I possibly can. Let me just say this.
Careful.
I was sitting at dinner in Wisconsin after a conference, and a gentleman at that table took a phone call from a very large commercial beekeeper who just reported sudden loss and was sort of freaking out. Like 1,000 colonies, boom, all of a sudden dead.
Yeah.
Okay. There was no conversation at the table where it was all these commercial beekeepers saying, you know what we need to do this year? We need to say all of our bees are dead, and we
I
need to.
I'm not trying to say that.
Like,
Yeah,
that's not going on. Like, is it going
I
on
agree.
somewhere? It's always there. There's always fringe things and elements going on for sure. But I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt,
yeah, they're losing
that the
bees.
folks that I personally know who are losing bees are losing bees. And this is not a broker scam, and this is not a grower scam. Sure, are the beekeepers getting their change jerked around by prices? Should they be earning more? I think farmers in general have been beaten up and bloodied for so long that it doesn't matter what the form of agriculture is, they're not getting paid enough. That's why family farms are folding left and right. That's why the dairy industry is crippled and nearly non-existent. That's why the cattle and the beef and the poultry and all these things are crippled and are suffering. That's why these farms are going up for sale. Why is that? What do we do about that? Right? Bee farming is no different. So please, anyone who wants to say that this is any kind of fraud or scam on the beekeepers aspect so they can get another $170 on a rental rate for their bees, I am here to tell you that I know personally for a fact honest Christian men who are losing thousands of colonies, who are trying to figure out what the next steps are with multi-generational heritage as family beekeepers. There's a lot going on here, folks. We don't have the answers. What do we do to move forward? That's a conversation for a different day.
Hey, here's another thought on the commercial side too, Greg. If you look at it like this, so let's just look at it from a different perspective. And, that was a fair question to ask. I think, we're trying to work through this, but let's look at it this way. If I'm a commercial beekeeper, first of all, I think any of these guys that get into this area aren't doing it because they're like, I'm fixing to make millions, right? These guys are going to many different areas to make money, and beekeeping is not going to be one of them. I'm not saying that these guys can't do well, but if I was a commercial beekeeper and I wanted to figure out how to extract more money out of the colony, what I would probably do is not lean toward, hey, how can we figure out how to be a little bit deceitful here and get more for our almond pollination. I would look at it from this perspective. How do we get more legislation in place to keep some of that adulterated honey out of the U.S.? And what you're going to do then is you're inadvertently going to cause the American honey producers to get more per pound. I mean, both of them are going to be a difficult road, right? But that would be another way that I would think would be probably a little bit more of an honest approach, is like, hey, you know what? Like Greg said, I'm sure there's probably a handful of guys out there. There is always a few bad apples in the bunch, right? But I also agree too. I heard I don't want to say a stab, but I heard a couple of unwarranted comments. Yeah, pot shots. Not on this chat, but another chat in the recent past that kind of came after a couple commercial guys, and I think it was kind of unwarranted. And I think it's, people kind of naturally want to go for an answer, and they want to attack somebody, right? Because everybody's always responsible for something. It can't just be that things are happening because they're happening, right? So I don't know. I felt like it was a little bit unwarranted that they kind of, a little bit of an underhanded comment went out toward a couple of really big commercial guys, and everybody in this section knows who these guys are. But I don't know. I don't think that was fair for that to happen. And I think by and large, these guys work really hard, and they work together to try to produce the best product they can. But in the same token, these guys are trying to earn a living too. And, I made that comment earlier, Greg, about how I thought that, the family farms is just, I think farmers are built of a certain thread, a certain type of cloth that really, I'm not saying it's going away in this world, but there's a lot easier ways to make money than farming, And when you see, if you're part of a family farm and you've seen your parents and grandparents and great grandparents struggle to earn a dollar bill, and there's so many things beating you over the head that are constantly coming at you, they may look at it and be like, I really don't want to do that. But, I'm telling you, these people are a tenacious bunch. Bob Benny says that word a lot. And he's spot on. Be tenacious, And that's really what it takes. It takes a lot of really tough grit for these guys to do what it is that they do, because there are no guarantees when it comes to commercial agriculture. And beekeeping is no stranger to that.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think I don't know that anyone's trying to say it was a scam. I think that it's more just like, I think beekeepers need to get paid kind of what, simple law of supply and demand. If you have fewer bees, if it just should, you should get more for the bees, if you know what I'm saying. And same thing with the honey. If there's honey flooding this market, then the prices are going to go down, and it hurts us as the beekeepers. And I think that's happening in all kinds of industries. And so it's just a difficult thing. And we just need to figure out how to get on top of it, maybe get the loss down, hopefully, and everybody can be provided with what they need. But somehow, I think that, it's a business in the ultimate, for the commercial guys. And no, I don't think anybody's saying that it's a scam. They're trying to scam anybody. I think if anything, it's the other people, maybe it's not the growers so much, but there's somebody, maybe I'm not sure where I think the beekeepers are the ones kind of getting screwed in a lot of ways out there. So I know I've experienced it personally. We had a broker that scammed us the last time I went out there. That's when I said, I'm done. And I know that hives get stolen out. There's a lot of risk when you're trying to do the pollination thing. So I think one option, ultimately might be if we can figure out how to close the borders just a little bit with honey coming in, maybe beekeepers will focus more on honey in the future and be able to get those prices up. It's always a moving target. There's always, the industry's always adjusting. Mm-hmm. And man, there's so many, when you think about beekeeping, all the variables involved, just the basic variables in your individual bee yard. And then you think of if you're a commercial guy, all the variables involved in the industry. And then you have all the government stuff happening and all the worldwide global stuff happening, and just all the pressures, all the things that happen. It's just crazy. And it's not like you guys mentioned, Tom. I think it's not just the beekeepers, it's all farmers and all agriculture. It's just difficult right now. And so anyway, we kind of got off topic there a little bit, but but yeah, I don't think she was trying to say there was a scam going on, but it's just difficult. And so, that 2 hours went by in a hurry.
The thing about these things, it's important to recognize and hear people out. And there's a lot. Everyone, you could go anywhere, and there's gonna be people who are dead set on this, or they think this is going on, or there is maliciousness here, or there's foul play here, or there's conspiracy here, or there's this and that. And I get that. How we move forward, how we have to entertain all these thoughts. We have to talk them through. We have to get on the other side of it. We have to get uncomfortable with some of these things, flesh these things out, and put some kind of plan that we feel is best for us, even individually, to move forward. And what that looks like is going to be different for a lot of folks. Will the grandstanding continue? Sure. Will the posturing and politicking continue? Sure. Always has, always will. What I'm interested in is results. How do we move forward? What does that look like? How does all of these factors that we just talked about, globally, locally, nationally, how does all this play in to agriculture? Guys, we're bee farmers. The sooner everybody accepts the fact that we are all bee farmers, no matter the scale, that's when we have to start looking at solutions, knowing that we are all bee farmers of different scales and sizes and shapes. How do we move forward? I don't know yet. There's a lot yet that we're never going to know, but we do know we love these things. We love these bees. It's a part of who we are, what we do, what we feel called to do. If there's anybody who's going to pull together and figure it out, it's going to be farmers, and it's going to be bee farmers. We're going to get through it. We're going to figure it out, and we'll keep putting our best foot forward. And then when the next thing comes, we're going to be in the same spot. We're going to do it all over again. And that's all right. Bruce, I want to thank you for your $20 super chat. I really appreciate your support and all the things that you bring to the table with your experience and your conversation. Pat from Freedom Apiaries, he says the stream team is dialed in tonight. We got into the red there a little bit, didn't we? That's it. Oh, and Tom doesn't have one. That's not fair, man. What's going on here, Tom?
I don't know.
Brian,
Jason, send Tom one.
We got to fix that.
Send him one. Doggone it.
So Pat, thank you for your super chat.
When you were
and
saying
Brian, thank you for your super chat.
Oh yeah, I had two thoughts, and maybe we're overthinking all this. Maybe it's just a series of events. And a coworker of mine today, she's stressing out just because of some things at work. And I told her, I said, "You're a great trainer." I said, "You're overthinking it." I said, "Think of an apple as an apple. It's not a seed that grew into a tree that developed this flower that got, and I typed out this big old long paragraph thing of how an apple develops. I said, it's just an apple. That's it." And then I thought also here, and I don't even know why I thought about this. It's an older Bill Murray movie. What About Bob? When you said, "How are we going to get through this?" Baby steps. That's it. We're going to walk out to our, bee building. You're going to start the truck. You're going to fill up your tote just like you have every other year. We're going to go about it. We're all, like you said, we're all bee farmers, and we're going to do everything that we have for however many years we've been beekeepers, and we'll get through it. Like Bob says, tenacity. I hope it's nothing major, nothing huge that is going to continue. If it's just truly a series of events that have all kind of hit at one moment in time, then that would probably be best case scenario for everyone. But we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll tell, and we'll just take baby steps and work through it.
Look at that, Bruce. That was fancy. That was the last thing I want to quickly show on here is without having excuse me, the solid point of reference, either you think it's a hobbyist problem or it's a commercial beekeeper problem. I just want to quickly recognize their folks, because these folks they're in the ditches. They're trying to figure this thing out. Central Kentucky Bees asked his question or her question: what's the common denominator? Maybe the common denominator is it's extremism on all sides, and maybe we won't quite figure that out. Let's see. Mr. Noah Gaynor, I'm not sure where Noah's at. Looks like he's at 50% loss. That's rough. TJ Jastrom, 66% loss. Kenny Bach, Southern Ohio. I'm seeing a lot of loss in Southern Ohio, Eastern Ohio, and Northeast Ohio, going into Pennsylvania and coming around this belt. Kenny Bach, 55% loss. A lot of bees going into winter, plenty of honey. Dead outs have very small clusters and not much stored pollen. His normal winter losses, 10%. I mean, that's something. That's crazy. You know him and love him. The one and only Mr. Tony West Bees, also in Ohio. I think he's Southwest Ohio, if I remember right. He's at a 33% loss already. Combination of poor fall nutrition, drought, and mites not controlled as well in the past. Takes complete blame for these losses. I mean, 33% lost. I can remember sitting in on one of Tony's talks talking about the Damari method, and I think his losses were like 10, 20% in the very worst years. So even he is going a little heavier than normal. And then we get up to Michigan. Mr. James Noel, he's at cruising at a 10% loss. No big deal. We just had Jason from Bohemia on here. Jason, you mentioned 40, 50% losses might be normal. You got some folks, it's the Schedinger's cat. The cat's not dead till we go out and see the dead cat. Mr. Chris Morrow, Drop Pine Farms, says, I'm afraid to look. Brian's at a 38%. Jimmy's Neighborhood Bees in Virginia, he's at a 25% loss already. Miss Jessica Fairfax, I'm not sure where she's at, but Virginia. Okay, Virginia, 50% loss. Guys, I mean, this is. Maybe we get on the other side of this and we figure it out. What I can say is there has never been the open line of communication, and the communication channels that we have now have never existed in the past. There's a great opportunity here to share information, to support each other, lift each other up, try to dig through this, try to figure it out. There is opportunities that we have now greater than we have ever had in the historical past. And we're going to need to lean on that, I think, to move forward, to help us all get through this, no matter what the reason is. If you think that this is interdimensional Bigfoot mite maulers who are coming in and killing the bees and whatever you think the thing is, it doesn't matter. Finding solutions to work through it, that's what we need to do. That's what we have to work towards. So let's stop the grandstanding and the posturing and I've got this whole thing figured out. Let's look for some solutions. Let's try to figure it out. Jason?
One last thought, and then I know you got to wrap this up because we're getting late. With all these losses we're talking about, and I was out of town last week, there is one that does not have any losses. And I just have to make sure that I recognize my winning the Super Bowl. They are not losers. They're not losers. They are winners, and they are world champions. So I will say,
Bruce?
Somebody mute him. Can somebody pull his plug?
Wait,
Look at that.
Jason, how many Alabama players on that Philly team?
Thank you.
a good amount. Good amount.
So how about that quarterback and that receiver and the lineman, and there's several. I know there's at least 4 or 5, maybe more. Roll Tide. So like
Roll Tide.
Of course, got to say go Cougars. BYU beat Kansas last night by 34. So I'm having a good day. My high school team's going to the Final Four.
I think. Yeah. In all seriousness, I think this has been a great chat. I think to see so many people willing to try to chime in on what they think it is, what we need to do next, what beekeepers need to do. It's awesome. The community is awesome. The support system is awesome, whether it's locally or whether it's across the country. Having the stream team weigh in and bring Tom and Yappy and I in to kind of talk about what we're seeing. At the end of the day, I started beekeeping years ago. I had a year where I had about 40% losses, and I rebounded just fine. Bees are resilient. Beekeepers are resilient. We will get through this. This too shall pass. We just got to support each other through the process. That's all.
Yappy, final thoughts?
2 things. One is that, yes, we as beekeepers are part of a long line and heritage of those that have come before us. They've seen this before. They didn't just walk out there and flip a lid open and go, oh, there's a problem, and we can either fix it or we can't. Some of these things take a little bit of time and some pain to get through, but they've been through before, whether it's something that's been here before or something that's new. We will get through this. It's just a matter of those that are in the position to figure it out, or at least call it something and not have a solution for it. They still made it through it. Colony collapse disorder. Here we are years later, and we all still keep bees. So the worst part about this is the financial loss from the commercial guys all the way down to the guy who just started last year and those that are getting into it this year. Just remember, you're a farmer, whether you've got 1 or 1,000, and if you treat it as such and you and educate yourself as such, you will be better in the long run for not just your production, but also for the way your bee husbandry is. A little tip for those that Bruce is down here. He's a little bit south of me, but I've had a couple 3 or 4 days of some beautifully warm weather. We've got trees popping like crazy around here, and now we're going through a cold snap that I don't think is going to hurt much, but provide your bees with a source of water. I have got a kiddie pool out there next to my bee yard, and I add water to it. I never clean it. I've got cinder blocks sitting in it and pieces of wood just to make it as natural as possible. And during the summer when it doesn't rain, I just throw a 5-gallon bucket of water in there. But my bees are tearing water up right now, looking for that water source when the temperatures got up. So they're foraging and they're bringing in water. All right, get ready for that. That's one thing that I've not heard a lot of people talk about in the getting ready for spring management, is making sure your water sources are available. So based on what I'm seeing, think about it, get ready for it. So Once your days hit a little bit warm, your bees got the other thing that they need, and that's a water source. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yappy, thanks for being here. Make sure you check out Yappy's channel, Honey Money TV, and Yappy Bee Man. You can learn a lot there. Yappy, I always appreciate having these conversations because something always fleshes out. One little quick thing that I'll add is I'm thinking as you say that, you know what I saw that I've never seen in such great proportions this year is in October and November, we've got like an 1.5 acre pond. It's like 30 feet deep. And on the edges, what I noticed is the bees were landing on all these little goofy little moss and algae pockets. They were all on top of, I've never seen them do that this heavy ever. It's like they were trying to mine any and all mineral they possibly could. And even in those weird places. So yeah, they go for dirty water, but I noticed that was different this year. You would it was almost like little swarms of bees all over these little pockets. There's maybe something to that. Tom Sosman, thanks for joining on tonight. Final thoughts with Tom Sosman. What do you got for us, Tom?
Yeah, so I would say that we should be comfortable with not having an actual answer. You know, there may not be an answer that comes out of this. So be comfortable with that. One other thing that I noticed kind of reading through the comments here a little bit, I like what NKY Honeybee says. It says they're trying to divide this, blah, blah, blah. But the one thing I would take from that would be is you mentioned earlier about, between treatment, non-treatment guys or blaming commercial or not commercial or whatever that might be. I think the biggest thing that we probably should look at is don't get too far into the negative side of things. We're definitely better as a whole when it comes to things. I don't care if you are a small operator with one hive or you have 100 hives or you have 10,000 hives. Everybody can teach somebody something, and I try to learn from everybody, honestly. I would also say that and I'm guessing probably most people in the chats are probably hobbyists. There might be some people that are a little bigger than that, I guess, but I would say focus back and the basic bee biology. Learn the basics. Focus on the basics. Sometimes you can actually lessen a lot of your problems just understanding and going back to the basics. I understand that. I'm not saying don't educate yourself because we always need to continue to learn. But the biggest thing too, I would say is if you're going to be a beekeeper, be tenacious. That's what it's going to take.
Thanks again, Tom, for joining. Great words of wisdom there. Brian, final thoughts. What have you got for us, Brian?
Yes.
Thank you so much for that, Brian.
That's Brian getting dialed in right there, baby.
Wow.
Dialed in.
Oh, I don't know. I think everybody here's hit the nail on the head. It's just tenacity, and like I said, we're beekeepers. Those of us that are going to stick to it, we're going to come out of this. Like Jason said, some years back, 40%. He built right back up and he's where he is right now today. So, I don't have any doubt that Tom, if you've had losses, you're going to be okay. Bruce, he's an anomaly, but his bees are too mean for any virus to even want to touch. Yappy is Yappy,
great.
But everybody, in all honesty, I mean, I think we'll be okay. I do. The more I've been just thinking about this, I think about the last year of just every single thing that the bees had to deal with. And it's just a whole series of events. And it's just like us. I mean, if we get a cold and then you add on something else, then you add on something else, and you add on something else, and, and then you're not fed and you don't have the nutrition. Well, it's just, a series of things. And hopefully it's that. I'm hoping that it's that. But we'll see. Time will tell,
Awesome. Yep. Well said. Bruce, final thoughts.
Ditto. Honestly, that's about all I have to say. It's been such a good such a good chat tonight. And I don't think we've solved any problems, but we've discussed a lot of possibilities. And I'm just going to kind of sit back. I don't know if I'll ever do a video on it. I may or may not, but I'm just going to kind of sit back and just see what happens and keep doing the best I can with my bees. And if I notice more problems, then I might panic a little bit more, or I might. But right now things are looking pretty good. I'm grateful for that. I've been blessed. I've because in large part because of this community, the people in the comments, and because of you guys, all 6 of you on here, and others, I have all 5 of you plus me, 6 total. But I've learned so much, and I've become a much better beekeeper. I'm learning how to be more efficient. Plus, my couple local mentors here and friends I have just from all over the place. I've become a better beekeeper, a better person, and I've learned how to be a little bit more efficient. Although I'm not as efficient as I want to be, I'm still striving to get there. So I think tenacity and perseverance, and just never be afraid to continue to learn, keep an open mind, and never be afraid to reach into areas you may not be familiar with, or search out the new things, and just try and figure it out. If you just become closed-minded and stuck in one rut all the time and can't learn, then you get in trouble. Brian, what are you laughing at, man?
He's causing trouble in the comments, Bruce.
I'm not even paying attention. Oh, I see.
Yeah,
I see.
he is just-
I see. Oh, he's got you. Okay, I got it. Anyway, but yeah, I would just say to be tenacious and always continue to learn, and keep an open mind, and you'll continue to get better and improve. I'm still a long ways from where I want to be, and I may never get there, but the journey is what it's all about. And the bees are the conduit to the people, and that's really what it's all about right there.
Yeah, I appreciate what you guys all brought to the chat tonight. The idea is not for us all to agree on anything. It's to talk things through, share some ideas, get uncomfortable with some ideas and some thoughts. And I think we did a pretty good job of that. I want to thank everybody in the comments too for hanging on. This is in way overtime. We never go this late. It's hard to wrap up this kind of a talk, but I appreciate everyone who's hanging there with their thoughts and things. What I would like you to do is once this video publishes, if you can, put in your state, your percentage of loss, and what you think. What is something that seems out of the ordinary that happened for you with your bees this year? Maybe we can kind of cruise through and kind of see all those things. I want to share this one thing just real quick with you guys. It came up recently, and I don't know that a lot of folks know this. I didn't know this. But one morning I was in my morning devotional and I ran across this and I thought, what did I just read? What is that? I never heard that before. And what does that mean? How does this pertain to Beepocalypse 2025? I'm not sure, but I can tell you that there is something about these bugs in the box. There is something that we feel called to, that no matter what, thick and thin, up and down, mountain or valley, that we're digging in and we're going to move forward, right? There's no question about that. So what is so special about this, right? If this was my pet rabbit project, or one of my other millions of other brainiac ideas of things that have failed on the farm, it was no problem to just stop and move on, right? But this is different. There is something about these bugs in the box. There is something about this relationship with the honeybees that surpasses all understanding, but here we are. And so why is that exactly? I'm going to leave you with this. I would encourage you to do a little deeper dive into this, into Luke chapter 24. And for those who might not be familiar with this part of the book, Christ comes back after he's resurrected and is now making himself known and shown to the disciples. And they look and they see him, and there he is standing, and they say, is that you? And he's like, what do you mean? Check out the nail prints, look at the scars, like I'm standing like in flesh, right? And he says, behold my hands and feet, that is I myself, handle me and see, for a spirit has not flesh and bones as you see me have. And when he had thus spoken, he showed them his hands and his feet, and while they yet believed not for joy and wondered, he said unto them, have you here any meat? So imagine this. This is not a ghost form. This is not an aberration. It's not a hologram, right? Here is Jesus in the flesh saying, do you have something to eat? Let me show you that I am a man and it is me. Do you have something to eat? Now listen to this, guys. And they gave him a piece of broiled fish and a honeycomb. Now, you read on, and then the next part of that chapter, you read that is literally the last thing on resurrected Christ's belly before he ascends, finally ascends, and goes to heaven. That is special. There is extreme symbolism with that, and that is something that is very, very powerful. So here we are on earth, toiling and tearing all of these things about these honeybees. What is it that is so special about these bees that we're willing to go on here and talk for 2.5 hours about something that we're never probably going to find an answer to? Here's what I can say. If it was that important for the disciples to feed Christ in those last moments, broiled fish, and the very last thing, honeycomb, before he ascends, that's special. There is extreme symbolism there. So are we ever going to know why we are so called and drawn to these honeybees? Probably not. But one thing I can definitely tell you is, like the honeybee is to the hive, we are better together. We're going to figure this thing out. We're going to work together. We're going to dig it in for the love of the honeybees, for the love of the calling, for the love of each other, right? We're going to keep this positive. We're going to figure it out, and we're going to get to the other side of this, right? That's what this whole thing is all about. Let's share some ideas. Let's have some uncomfortable conversations. More importantly, let's let our light shine before men so that they see our works and give glory to our Father in heaven. Thanks so much for spending your time with us tonight. We love you. We appreciate you. Let's keep everybody in our thoughts and everybody in our prayers as we all figure this thing out and dig through. We don't have to know the answer. All we have to do, it's simple. All we have to do is know the one who does. On that note, thanks again for listening. And as always, I want to remind you to be the lighthouse and be the change you want to see in this world. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.